Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Phil at the Movies. I'm your host, Phil Walsh, and you're listening to show number 136 of this ongoing podcast that is for the love of movies. Same, same soundtrack as usual, but wanted to change it up a little bit. Have a new logo for the show, which you can see in your podcast feeds, or if you're watching this on YouTube. I'm a big believer in periodic change and keeping things fresh and interesting and innovative. And even though it's just a simple logo change, I always like to try to keep moving forward, so to speak, and try to keep things exciting as possible. And given that we are through now spooky season, this feels like a good time to sort of reset the table and look ahead to the rest of 2024, as well as look ahead to what lies in 2025. So again, that'll be sort of on the menu for some upcoming shows. There'll be a lot of retrospectives in the coming weeks as I close out the year. But first and foremost, want to thank you as always for tuning in or watching this show each and every Friday. I know I may sound like a broken record, but it means the world to me. The support, the encouragement, the friendships that have been made while doing this show. And this past October was the best ever in terms of downloads, in terms of, I mean, we don't have a YouTube comparison for last year since this is the first year with that format, but everything has been incredible. And I just want to say thank you for your continued support and engagement with this show. I've said from the start it's a passion project, but just to know that you are you're interested in my cinematic philosophy, so to speak, and just the wonderful comments and just I've said it before, but the friendships, it really means the world to me. So thank you all for being a part of this cinematic journey with me. I'm going to keep doing this as long as there are movies, and thank God for that. Thank God in this world that we live in. It's a funny world we live in, to borrow that famous line from the Joker in The Dark Knight. In this world, it's wonderful that we have movies because while I am not someone who says disengage from sort of day to day matters, and certainly with politics or the world at large and the news and developments and just everything sometimes feels like it's spinning out of control or spinning off its axis. I'm so glad that we have movies that because they are a form of escapism, and there's nothing wrong with that. The world is a serious and complicated place as it is, and there is nothing more enjoyable, there's nothing more rewarding and frankly engaging than being able to sit in a dark theater, or if you're doing it in the comfort of your home, and watching something for 90 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours if you really are feeling adventurous. But it's a wonderful way to sort of tune out everything and just be immersed in a story. And for me, probably not the only person that would say this, but I'll say it because obviously I have this platform. Movies are really a stress reliever for me, and they really are a great way to unwind and just sort of tune everything out and just, as I said, immerse in a world for 90 minutes, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it is. And it's just wonderful because again, you're taken to these other places perhaps, or you're experiencing other factors or matters are part of the human story, human condition, and it's entertaining. I mean, again, whether a movie delivers something on a philosophical level, no pun intended, or if it's just pure popcorn flick, pure entertainment. I mean, again, that's the beauty of movies. That's the love of movies, and I just find such a rewarding experience every time I watch a movie, or certainly when I go to the theater. And I went to the theater a few times last week, but we're going to be talking about a recent film that is certainly capturing the hearts and minds of audiences everywhere. But more on that in just a moment. So before I begin, I just want to sort of look back and again, I'm sort of amazed that here we are. It's November 1st, All Saints Day. Happy All Saints Day if you celebrate it. I'm sort of stunned that Halloween is now behind us and we are, sort of looking ahead to the end of this year. I don't know where the time flies. I honestly, I mean, it feels like a cliche to say it, but I always have this sort of a long list of things. That I want to accomplish during spooky season or movies that I want to watch for the first time. And this was one year where I really found myself sort of looking at this list and saying, "Oh my God, like where did the time go?" I mean, life obviously happens and we have no control over that sometimes. But this was a year where I feel like I probably shouldn't have made a list, but nevertheless, recording this on the 30th, but it will of course drop this episode on November 1st, so Halloween will be in the rearview mirror. The pumpkin will no longer be lit, but even in these final waning hours of spooky season, it really is just sort of remarkable how fast it goes. And again, it just sort of left wondering where did all the time go? And again, all these plans that you have, sometimes they don't always go according to plan, but there's always next year, as the saying goes, always next year. But I hope you had a wonderful and spooky Halloween season. Hope you got to enjoy a number of new films. Perhaps you rewatch some classics and favorites. Certainly, for me, I always cap out October 31st with a rewatch of the classic, the one, the only Halloween. And what a perfect way to end the spooky season and celebrate all that was. And of course, with earnest and excitement, look forward to the year ahead. For all of us who are fans of spooky season and Halloween, and hold it very close and near and dear to our heart, it's more than just a day or a season. It's really an attitude. It's a personality in many ways. And so, even though the decorations may go down and the pumpkins will go dark and ultimately rot away, it's just around the corner, and we sort of hold that spirit of Halloween in our hearts. So as I say, it's 11 months and counting, and believe me, I will be beginning that countdown in earnest, especially with just sort of the way day to day life can be. Sometimes you need that needed distraction. But in any event, I'm sort of rambled on for a little bit longer than I wanted to at the start today, but wanted to talk to you about the film We Live in Time, starring Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield. And my God, I know I tend to say this a lot on the show, but I want to preface it by saying I I certainly will critique films that don't always strike a chord with me or light a match in any way, shape, or form. Certainly, last month with Joker, Folie à Deux, that was that was an experience, but we won't go down that road today. But generally speaking, I find it's much more engaging, much more exciting to talk about things that you actually enjoy. And so again, I just want to sort of preface that I really sort of go out of my way to make sure that when I review a film, when I talk about it, when I have people on, there's some real stake in it. There's a personal interest because ultimately, I think yes, there's some merit to tearing a film a new one, particularly if it didn't work. But at the end of the day, there is so much negativity. There is so much of that sort of harsh criticism in our own worlds and lives. And certainly, for me, I love watching movies. I write movie reviews on the side. And so I'm sort of immersed in all the ins and outs day in and day out. And I've seen my fair share of crappy movies this year, just to put it bluntly. And so when it comes to this show, when it comes to this platform, I would really rather just spend my time and energy talking about things that really resonate and I'm passionate about. And that's how I feel about this particular film. That's sort of a long-winded answer to get to the ultimate point, the ultimate center of this maze. But We Live in Time is not a film that reinvents the dramatic romance story in any way. This is a tearjerker for all intents in purposes. But again, spoilers if you have not seen the film. And if you haven't seen the film, I encourage you to run to your to your nearest theater. Again, you will be experiencing the waterworks. I'm not going to sugarcoat that one, but it is a film that it affects you in such a way where it is both sad, it is both hilarious, and it is ultimately heartwarming in a very strange way, particularly given the subject matter. So the film tells the story, the love story of two polar opposites. Again, a classic, tried and true story that is as old as time itself, and certainly no stranger to the romance genre. But in the film, Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield play Almut and Tobias, respectively. And as I said, they are polar opposites. Garfield's character, he's sort of in sales, and Pugh's character is a chef. And the way the film works, again, because we've all seen boy meets girl, girl meets boy, what have you, and their story unfolds. This is a film where it works backwards, or I should say, it starts in sort of the present and then tells its way forward through flashbacks. And it's very effective because it's a non-linear structure. And ultimately, I think in a genre that is certainly covered, and we all know the classics like Love Story, Terms of Endearment, Casablanca, La La Land, to think more recently. But it's kind of nice to see a film take take the subject matter, and take the tropes, and then sort of invert it in a way. And right off the bat is the way the characters are set up. So you have, again, the classic, boy meets girl situation, but the way that Almut and Tobias meet one another is truly a truly a freak accident. She is driving home, and she ends up hitting Tobias with her car. And as a result, they strike up a connection. She tells him that she's a chef at a restaurant, and he goes there. He's in the midst of going through his own divorce. And pretty much it's the classic love at first sight. But as I said at the start, these two are opposite. And again, it's elements that we've seen in other films, but done in a way that is truly sincere. It's never a wink and a nod. Like this is not a romantic comedy. I guess is probably the best way to put it. I mean, there's humor in it, but this is an unconventional love story. This is a situation where two characters are pretty much defined by how much time they have with one another. And again, as I said, spoiler alert, if you have not seen the film, ultimately, Almut is diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer, and much of the film sort of works its way in sort of a present day telling, working its way back to flashbacks, and then ultimately arriving at where we know this is going to go. This movie doesn't make any sort of secrets about the direction it's going to take. As I said, there was not a dry eye in the theater when I saw it. And again, I think it's a cathartic movie in a lot of ways, because the story of these two characters, they are total opposites. As I said, one's a chef, one's in sales. Okay, you've got sort of the paradigm there. But what I really found very effective is sort of the roles are reversed in a way. And Tobias is not the typical sort of male character that we would associate in these kind of films. He's very sensitive, very much in touch with his feminine side. And there's a particular argument that it's a sticking point for these two potential lovers to be at the start of their relationship, where he wants to have a family, he wants to have children, and Amit is sort of like, I don't know if that's for me. And it creates this budding of heads. And of course, ultimately, she comes around to his point of view. He comes around sort of to seeing in her point of view. And of course, they do end up having a child, but it's a very trying and difficult situation. And but ultimately, again, this is not a sort of a downer from start to finish. They do sort of pepper in humorous moments, like particularly the birth of their daughter happens while at a gas station. Again, it's just sort of this sort of over the top, but grounded in a way where it is so relatable. And the dialogue between the two, the arguments that they have, particularly when Amit wants to enter a cooking competition, and she doesn't want to tell Tobias about it because one, she's just been diagnosed. Two, they're planning their wedding, and she kind of wants to do this only for her. And again, creates this very awkward tension between the two of them, which is it never feels forced. A lot of times in these types of movies, the drama feels like it is contrived, like it's just there because we have to have an obstacle. And frankly, again, you could have just had the film been their day to day life dealing with the fact of Almut's illness, but yet the film goes another level to sort of inject real life situations and real life stakes into the film. And particularly as she's battling the rigors of the disease and chemo and treatment, it's very real. There's nothing that feels forced or sort of quote unquote movie enhanced. This really comes off as the complicated ins and outs, ups and downs of love, and all the pitfalls, all the trying moments, all the excitement, all the joy, all the defeats, all the victories, all of the above. And it paints this portrait of two real beautiful souls who, again, are the epitome of opposites attract. And it's such a poignant and tender story. The film is immaculate. I mean, one, director John Crowley really had an eye for the story he wanted to tell, because this is very much an ensemble piece between Garfield and Pugh. It's not like she's dominating or he's dominating. They really work well together and drive the narrative forward. It's not like one sort of personality is larger than the other or one character storyline is more significant than the other. They both have equal time and equal footing for where this story is going, and their choices both sort of conflict and ultimately bring them together in a way. And there's just so many wonderful moments in the film. I frankly could spend 2 hours just sort of dissecting each particular moment, because it is so immaculate in the way that it is crafted, both in terms of the score. The music works so well with this film, and again, it pulls on your heartstrings, particularly in those moments where have a packet of Kleenex ready, because you were definitely going to be feeling all the feels in those moments, because Garfield and Pugh really hit it out of the park. I mean, these are two exceptional, phenomenal actors and actress, and they nail it every time. They bring such a humanity and a humility to either of their roles that ultimately you feel when you're watching this film. You're not watching Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh play these characters. You feel like you're watching the lives of Tobias and Alma, and we've been sort of given access to their lives for a period of time. It's so intimate in the way that we are sort of navigating their situation and their story. And again, it's real. Again, just sort of the moments where they're having a family dinner and secrets come out. For example, Almut was once very much into figure skating, and at this point, she's been together with Tobias for a while, and it's never come up. And so you sort of have those moments where there's this sort of awkward tension, and then ultimately it turns into, either a laugh or something poignant. And again, that's all part of the complexities of life and love. And there's a moment early on in the film, it's actually at this dinner scene, where Tobias's father is talking about how he and Tobias's mother never actually married, and it was this idea that she, or his mother, felt, because she had passed away by this point, but she felt they didn't need a piece of paper to sort of signify their love and their commitment for each other. And that's ultimately what happens with Alma and Tobias, because, as I said, they're in the midst of planning their wedding while raising a child, while battling her illness, while she's preparing for this cooking competition. And of course, as luck would have it, the cooking competition is on the weekend for their wedding. And of course, it doesn't come to fruition, the wedding, but it's sort of a nice tying together where both Alma and Tobias realized, they don't need a formal ceremony. They don't need a piece of paper to show or prove that they love each other. That they do love each other. They've been there for each other. They've supported each other in all manners and all shapes and forms. And of course, the greatest result of it is their daughter. And the film crescendos right at this moment where Alma puts on the ice skates again, and rather than stay through the cooking competition, she ultimately takes Tobias and their daughter to this rink, and it's just the two of them, just the three of them, all skating inside, and it's just beautiful. Again, it's one of those genuine moments. There's not a lot of dialogue. It's just a family in the moment, living life despite all of the complexities, all of the disappointments, all of the problems that they have going on outside. It's just a moment that is very real, and it ultimately crescendos with where we know the story ultimately ends up, which is with Almut passing away. And the movie, there's multiple points, but the movie works so well in kind of bookend moments. At the start of the film, we're introduced to Almut on their farm where they live, and she's going out in the morning to get fresh eggs to bring in for breakfast. And that scene replays itself at the end, but instead of Almut, it's Tobias and their daughter, and sort of all the little advice and moments and memories that he has and had with Almut, whether it was cooking or just sort of, being together. They play out in sort of a nice callback manner at the end, where it's just Tobias and his daughter making breakfast together, accompanied, of course, by a dog that they've alluded to throughout much of the film. Again, just sort of moments of sort of joy amid all of the sadness and heartbreak. And again, it's a movie that knows what it's doing, and you know what you're going for when you get into it. And again, the title says it all. We live in time. And you could read that or parse it how many ways you want, but ultimately that is all we have. That is all we have is time. It is not infinite. It is finite. And that is something that goes on in this particular story, but it is so relatable, because even though these characters are fictional, even though the situation is dramatic, ultimately we can relate to these moments, to these anecdotes, because in some way, shape, or form, we've all gone through similar events in time, all similar moments in our lives. And it just left me in such uh, a heartwarming. This is not a crowd pleaser, in the sense that, like, you're not going to be, oh wow, let's all go sing and dance and be merry at the end of the film. It's not that kind of a movie, but it's not so depressing at the end where you're like, oh my god, I have to go lie down, or go take a Xanax or something. Like, it's not that. It's a perfect balance of sweet and sorrow. And again, I think partly because we've all experienced tragedy. We've all experienced heartbreak. We've all experienced love and the ups and downs, the happiness, the sadness. We've experienced it all. And I think that's what makes the film so relatable is it's not hitting you over the head. Like I sort of make the comparison to the film Love Story, which certainly a lot of people enjoy. It's a classic for many reasons, starring Ryan O'Neal, made back in the 70s based on a book. And it's again, it's a very sentimental, somewhat probably cliched by today's standards given the films that have been inspired after it, but I sort of put Love Story up next to this and I say, okay, what works better? And some may say, oh, you're just being having recency bias, but I really do think We Live in Time sort of captures a much more vivid portrait. And I think in part because the characters in this film are so relatable. Whereas Love Story, you may like the performances, you may like the characters, but they're sort of playing almost characters in a way. I know this sort of sounds almost rhetorical or oxymoronic, but in We Live in Time, there's much more humanity. There's much more of a reality that I think modern audiences can both understand and identify more. And it's messy, it's complicated, it's the beauty and the wonders of love. It's all tied up right there in this unique little package. And you sort of think, how much more can you say about the a tragic love story or a story that ultimately it's going to end in sorrow despite all of the happiness. I think it ultimately comes down to just the honesty that the film projects, and it never felt forced. It never felt like there was just a need to ham it up or really lean into the cliches or the dramatics. It strikes that perfect chord where there is a little sentimentality because, again, you are telling a love story, but there's enough humor and ultimately reality injected into it that it strikes a chord. This film just struck a chord with me in a way that I was not expecting. I figured I would enjoy it because I certainly enjoy the performances of Pugh and Garfield. I think they're wonderful actors, but this just surpassed my expectations, and it delivered a film that really tugs on those heartstrings. And while it ultimately is bittersweet by the end, the journey we go on, the ride through these characters' lives, it is so intricate and it is so intimate that we leave it ultimately feeling fulfilled in a way that sometimes these movies where they end on a down note leave you kind of feeling, oh, I've got to go watch something, happy and upbeat, or like I said, go take a Xanax or something afterwards. Nothing could be further from the truth when we arrive at We Live in Time. Yes, there's heartbreak. Yes, there's sorrow, but it's all part of this beautiful story of a family, of a couple, of love. And that's powerful. So I found this film to be one of the year's best. I expect I will have this on my top 10 of 2024. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And it is a film that I would recommend you go see in theaters because there's something about watching a movie like this in a crowd with an audience, because certain moments land differently than they would if you were at home. And certainly when this film ends, because it's a flood of emotions. As I said, there was not a dry eye in the theater. I kid you not. Everybody I went was crying. I was crying. Like it really, it hits you in a way. And there's something cathartic about watching this with an audience, because you laugh at certain moments, you sigh at other moments, you weep together. It really is it's a film you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, go go watch this with a crowd and have some sort of a religious experience, but it is that powerful. And again, I do think the music also helps because it really does create those moments of just awe and also sorrow. And so I have to recommend We Live in Time. I think it is easily one of the year's best films, a true delight. And again, I feel funny even saying that because sometimes the subject matter, definitely leans more into the bittersweet sorrow. But it is an experience, and it is an experience that will stay with you. I saw the film over the weekend, and I haven't been able to shake it because it just it latches on, and the moments in the film that paint this entire story are extremely real and vivid, and that's something that these types of movies I feel don't always capture in the most effective way. But We Live in Time, it hits its marks, and it is a film that you will not be wasting your time on. Just to sort of put a finer point on it, I recommend it wholeheartedly. But there we have it. Have you seen We Live in Time? What do you think of this wonderful, bittersweet, uh, tearjerker of a movie? Have you seen it? Would you recommend it as well? And again, if you have not seen it, I really do encourage you to check this one out because it's a film that opened slowly back in October, and each week it's been gaining more theaters, and it's continued to resonate with audiences, and that's something. Again, it speaks to both the performances of Garfield and Pugh, but also the story that is being told. And again, I think that's why audiences are connecting with this film in a way because it has something to say, and it is saying something that is so relatable to everybody from all walks of life. Everybody can find something in this movie to latch onto, and even for the cynic at heart, I do think they will be hard pressed not to sort of resist dabbing their eye or sort of wincing at the real tender moments that this film has to offer, and there are many. But there we go. That does it for me today, everybody. Kicking off this November 1st with We Live in Time, as I teased at the start of the show today. Going to be a lot of retrospectives and reviews coming over the next few weeks. Going to be having a number of guests on the show to talk about some of the year's best films, as well as, of course, capping out a top 10 of 2024 when the year closes out. But that will be all for today. As always, thank you for tuning in or watching the show on YouTube. I'll be back next week, and we will certainly do this all over again for the love of movies.